You can't live in this tiny land so crowded with people, with two peoples hating each other. Let's understand that these people are actually related to one another. We're all Semitics. We all came from the same cradle of civilization. There's not great differences, but to have such hatreds, it's unviable. It can't exist. It won't thrive. It won't survive. So a solution has to be found. A lot of people have been asking about my thoughts on the Israel-Palestine war that's going on right now and the question of how to solve it. And I don't really have any easy answers. It's very painful to wade into, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for what I think. But here's how it is for me. I'm Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed. I was raised Jewish. I wasn't religious at all, but I enjoyed learning Hebrew and all that. And we were kind of educated by teachers from Israel. I remember my Hebrew school teacher, a guy named Yossi, and eating the food and the falafel. Wow, this is really weird. And it was very exciting to read about this country. It was actually not very old at the time. But I never was like a Zionist. I never went to Israel like my parents wanted me to do. I never was that interested in it. But I felt in some way a kind of connection to it from having gone to Hebrew school and being exposed to all of that. But as I said, I never was like a staunch Zionist. What intrigued me about Israel was really more the kind of politics on the kibbutz, the cooperatives, the kind of slightly left-wing political mentality that was thriving in the country early on in its existence, the cooperative spirit. That kind of stuff interested me, and I was sort of excited by life on kibbutzim. But then, we've been dealing with forever with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I never had any deep thoughts about it. As I said, I never was a Zionist. But then I had two experiences. About 15 years ago, I was in Dubai for a writers' festival, and I met a Palestinian woman, really brilliant woman who I admire very much. And she asked me, because I'd just written the war book, whether if we could put our heads together and come up with some kind of solution to solve what was still a festering problem back in 2009. I had some ideas and we discussed them, but in the course of it, she revealed to me the incredible pain of what it was to be Palestinian, to have her country not so much stolen, but disappear from her view and their homes taken away and the life that they had being completely disrupted, and how tragic it was and how many people had suffered. And so from being a story that I would read in the newspaper, it became very real and personal, and I felt very deeply for her. And then about 10 years ago, a young man whose name I can't remember, his book that he wrote was called something about my father, something rather. I have it on my bookshelf. He asked me to read it and write a blurb for his book. And it was all about his experiences as a young Palestinian and having his home completely taken away from him. It was very powerful, very beautiful book. I will go and find the title for it. We'll post it at the end because I highly recommend it. And I wrote a blurb for it, and I felt very moved by his book. That also brought home to me. And so it seemed like this tragedy because as somebody whose parents and family, a huge chunk of it was evaporated in the Holocaust. And the Holocaust was something that's hard for people who didn't grow up in that generation to comprehend. But I remember once I was 22 and I traveled to France to visit a relative, a friend of the family, who had been a concentration camp survivor and was now a Nazi hunter. He took me into his office, and I can never forget the wall of photographs that he had collected from the concentration camps. It was so horrifying. It totally affected me. And so the idea of finding a land, a country for Jews to inhabit after this horrifying experience, never been a Zionist before, but it made sense to me. And yet on the other hand, feeling this nightmare of what Palestinians went through put me in a very awkward position because emotionally I could understand the need for Israel among a lot of Jewish people who had suffered so deeply in Europe. On the other hand, I could understand in a very visceral level what it was like to live in this beautiful, beautiful land with all these fruits and these beautiful homes that they had. And Palestinians are a very well-educated people, among one of the most well-educated people in the Middle East. I also felt very deeply about it. And so this woman that I met, she said that the only solution in the long run was the one-state solution. She felt very deeply about it. And I was kind of convinced by her argument. It made sense. But today that's completely unrealistic. That won't work. And the idea is that there should be one state, Palestinians and Israelis coexisting together, the same government. And it won't happen. So I don't believe in trying for things that just won't happen. So it's always been a two-state solution. The thing is, human beings are so wrapped in the moment. They're so involved in their emotions. They're such animals that they can't understand long-term thinking consequences. You can't live in this tiny land so crowded with people, with two peoples hating each other. Let's understand that these people are actually related to one another. We're all Semitics. We all came from the same cradle of civilization. There's not great differences, but to have such hatreds, it's unviable. It can't exist. It won't thrive. It won't survive. So a solution has to be found. And this horrifying prime minister that Israel has right now is just making things worse and worse and worse and worse. It's going to be an intractable problem that's going to fester for 20, 30, 40 years. We're creating massive amounts of resentment. At some point, it has to stop. And there are many Israelis who feel this way. And some kind of rationality has to emerge where we say, all right, let's get a two-state solution that's viable, that can survive, and that will get us out of this incredible violence and warfare that's going on in this very small parcel of land. And it's not difficult to figure it out. Of course, I don't want to be Pollyannish. Hamas was an incredible obstacle to this. But from what I can read and how I know and the people I've communicated with, Hamas is not generally loved by the Palestinian people. A lot of them deeply resent what has happened because of their actions. There is a middle ground among Palestinians whom I said are very educated, well-educated, and very peace-loving people. A lot of them are. And there are many Israelis. It's so insane. It makes you wonder about who we are, that this is getting worse and worse and worse, more violent, more polarized, more unsolvable. And so if I could go back to that woman, meet her again, I believe she lived in London, and put our heads together and get a group of people and we try and figure this out, my God, I would feel I would die a very happy man. But because I'm in a unique situation where I can feel both sides very deeply. Of course, I'm pulled more in one direction because of who I am and being raised Jewish. But a part of me has deep empathy for people who have suffered and who've been oppressed. And I can feel very deeply the other side. And I would love, if some point before I die, that there are people who are rational, who will come together and figure out a viable two-state solution to this horrifying problem.